a lot of space. Okay, good. Now, did you record on your end?
Yeah, let's see.
Did you get
It's saying that I need to ask for your permission.
Okay, go ahead and do it. How do you do it?
I'm not sure. There's probably some settings. It could be.
Let's see.
Okay.
Interestingly enough, this text copied my conversation I just had with you. It's doing it now. That's strange. Okay. Let's see if it's possible that it didn't ask me for permission.
Did it ask you?
It didn't, no. Let me see. Maybe I have to do something here. I think I do. So this get this out of here. Okay. All right. Okay, so it might be hard to send you this file if you don't record it. Do you want to record it?
It's okay. I won't record this one. Maybe we can send the file. If not, I'll start recording in the future once we figure it out.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to record from my end Jerome Dodd's astrological session with me. And today is the 16th of June. What month? Is it June? I don't know what month it is anymore. Okay. Okay. So anyway, I was sharing with you my prison teacher, who was Percy John Newton, and how he influenced my life. He did my chart, and I was one of these young white guys that knew it all. And I knew that astrology was a pseudoscience. You know, I mean, and I was not dumb enough to believe in astrology, but he did my chart and he freaked me out, and he knew too much about me. And that's kind of set me on the course of wanting to know how could he know that much. And that's kind of what set me on the course for astrology. And then something else happened. I had a young girl that I knew in Richmond, Virginia. When I was a fugitive living there, I was being harbored by a woman who's a preacher, and her name was Mary, and Mary Wiles. And Mary knew I was on the run from the law, and I was wanted all over the United States. So she had boarding homes, and I lived in one of hers and attended her little church, and and got to know a lot of the people there, and so. Why was I going to that story? Oh, so there was a little girl named Sandy who I really had a lot of affection for. She was married to a alcoholic drug user, and I had to kick his ass a couple of times because I just didn't like him, and he mistreated this 17-year-old girl so bad. And so what happened was when I was in prison, I got an email, a mail, not email. We didn't have email back then. I got a letter from Mary saying that Sandy had to go into the hospital. No, I got it from Sandy herself, that she's going back in the hospital because she has asthma, bad case of asthma. And that she just gave birth to a new child. And the doctor was worried about her fragility, being just a new mother. So he put her in a hospital in Richmond, Virginia. And so I told Sandy when the baby, I said, give me the time and date of the birth of the child, and I'll have Percy do a chart. Okay. So she gives it to me, and so Percy does a chart. You got to remember, mail takes a while to get, a couple of weeks maybe, because they got to screen it and they go through your mail. So timelines are not exactly right when it happens, but so what happened was I asked him to do the chart. He does it, and then he very ceremoniously very sadly walks over to his calendar, and he wrote a circle on the calendar. And I'm outside of a cell. You don't go in each other's cell when you're in prison, And so I'm standing outside of a cell, and he puts a circle on the calendar, and he said, "By this day, mother or child will be dead." And I thought, well, maybe the baby's premature, maybe the child will die. But I wasn't necessarily putting a lot of stock in that. I didn't want to believe such a thing. And the next letter I got was from Mary Wiles, the minister woman. And she told me the story about how Sandy died. Beautiful, beautiful young girl. And she said that around midnight, she got a phone call from Sandy, and when she was in the hospital. And Sandy was crying and begging for help because she couldn't breathe. And they wouldn't give her any medication because the doctor wasn't on duty. If I was a rich guy today, I mean, like if I had the means, I would have sued their ass. But
Yeah.
I here I am in prison, man. So Sandy called at 12 o'clock. And so Mary got out of bed and went to the hospital, prayed over her and tried to comfort her. And then she went back home exhausted and went back to sleep. At 4 o'clock in the morning, she gets another call from Sandy, and she says, "I'm dying and they won't help me." And she tried to counsel her over the phone and help her and comfort her, but it was a little impossible because she was really exhausted and she hadn't slept hardly at all. So she didn't go back to the hospital. Sandy died exactly at 4:15 a.m. And here's the really weird part about it. The baby was born also at 4:15 a.m., 6 days earlier. And Percy had said the mother or child will be dead within 6 days. She was exactly dead at 6 days to the hour and minute of the birth of that child.
Wow, that's unbelievable. It's truly incredible.
And that's that just, you can see where I'm at now.
Yeah, I mean that shocked you right into to believe no matter what. I mean, that pushes you beyond
It was like this guy knows something that there's nobody else knows,
Yeah. I think, when I first started following you, I've heard a little bit about, your interaction with Percy, and I thought that was interesting too, for
You
sure.
heard the story on the internet when I was doing that's right.
Yeah.
You've looked at everything, huh?
I've seen some of your stuff on the internet. Yeah, I've seen
That's
quite a bit. I mean, it inspired me to get the book, and then I got the book. I read the book. That was really good. And it's been a little while, maybe 6 months or so, because I study quite a few different things.
Yeah.
I'm also taking Japanese lessons too right now. So tomorrow, I'm doing Japanese, but this is a little bit different. Anyway, in regards to your information, I've read most of your stuff, so I've seen some things and heard some things. I'm just, for me, I'm not an astrologer, right? I'm a web developer, and I do quite a few other things too. But this is something that's interesting to me, and I think I have the capacity to learn it, relatively, it's a practice. I know it's a lifelong practice, but
Yeah.
I feel like with the internet and my computer background, I think I have an advantage. I have an advantage over a lot of people. So
you definitely do. The interesting thing was I wanted to know how Percy knew all this, and so there's a book called The Dark Moon Lilith that I realized was where he got his source of that knowledge. And Dark Moon Lilith is, you can calculate the dark moon Lilith in a chart. And you can find its position. And it says in the book that Lilith has special and evil powers over mothers and children at childbirth. And the reason she's given that dominion and power is she was the first wife of Adam. But
Really?
Adam left her because she was childless. She couldn't have a child.
Oh, wow.
And then he married Eve. And that's in the Bible. There's a reference to, she's called the night hag and screech owl. And so when I read that, and it said that she has special and evil powers over children from 6 days of its birth. And if it's afflicted. And of course, it was, afflicted very heavily in this chart. So it's an amazing thing. That's what got me on astrology and got me. And Percy was my mentor. And he was an amazing guy. I remember so many things. He was so wise. I mean, I watched the guy get, I was standing on the tiers are circular, and I think we were 4 floors up.
Okay.
And so there was a guy beating a guard half to death across the aisle. And my approach to all that is, my God, this is going to cause us a lot of problems, because they're going to come down on us pretty heavy. But Percy always saw things in a different light. It was always, Ron, you should be thankful for that guy. I said, what? That's how he saw life, and he said, don't you realize that if that didn't happen once in a while, these guys would run over you full bore. He said, the only reason they don't is they don't know if they're going to run into a fool like that one that's going to bring them up, It's going to teach them a lesson, So Percy had a way of seeing things that was always so different than what most people do. And he got busted he was in a closet with some young guy, and he got busted for a homosexual event, and they went to the hole, and he was in there for, I don't know, 2 months maybe. That's pretty serious offense, So, and
Wow.
When he was there, and he was a huge guy, he must have weighed 350 pounds.
Wow.
Big dude. And he had the eyes that were like lightning, they'd go through you. And I was real hard on him about the homosexual stuff, and judged them a lot, you know what I mean? And so he always said, don't judge unless you'd be judged, Ron, don't judge me. And so while he was in there, he went on, they called it a hunger strike, but for him, it was a fast.
Yeah.
And, he came out, he lost 100 and some pounds.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, he was amazing. What discipline, And I'd said to him, I said, why did you do this? He said, I did it for you, Ron, because you're weak. And he said, you just don't have the strength to do what it takes to fast. So he wrote this here, and his words are written on the bottom of this. And he wrote here, he says, let's see if I can read it to you. News about Senator Kennedy's misfortune. I definitely had predicted that something would go badly wrong with his campaign. Something when he launched it, it is the waste of the it's on the waste of the moon. And then he wrote on the side of this, somebody must dedicate himself to bringing about an end to atrocities, debaucheries, infamities or something. Anyway, so he wrote this on fasting. It's really a good article. And he really believed in fasting. And the reason, it's funny, this just happened to pop out when I was doing this, showing you the book. And he would give me, write things sometimes to me, and this is one of the things I've got that he still wrote, that I have other things in possession that he wrote. He would tell me things like, this is way back in the 60s, you got to remember, and he would write me something like, or he'd tell me that the Korean people
Mhm.
are born of the wolves, he would tell me. And he said they are going to cause great havoc on this earth and great crimes. And they're he said they're very dangerous people. Now this was back in the 60s.
Okay.
And North Korea, you know, we had our battle with them, and they fought like hell, and they pretty much kept us at standstill. But as I've watched over the years, how North Korea now has a nuclear bomb, and all the different things they've done, and how stubborn they are, and how, you know, and I've always kept his words in my mind about them, you know, and thought, especially back then, I thought, well, what North Korea got to do anything? You know what I mean? It's
Right, especially back then, right?
Jimmy Little
Now,
Presley, yeah.
and now it's well known. Everybody knows about,
Yeah.
North Korea is always a threat.
That's how he is. Yeah, he's an amazing guy. But he did many things. He saw many things. He knew everything about every kind of herb. He wrote other books. I don't have them, unfortunately, but he showed me how morning glory seeds were. There were morning glories growing outside on the fence. He said,
Okay.
take those seeds, Ron. He said, they're very powerful hallucinogenics. He said,
Oh,
yeah, he said, get a hammer and smash them up and eat them, and you'll see. And yeah, and I did, and I went on a trip. I can't believe it, you know. I mean, I really went on a trip. And so he, and I realized how the botanists, how much they knew. If you think about the names of the morning glory plants,
yeah.
one of them's called Heavenly Blues,
Okay.
and the other one's called Pearly Gates.
Wow.
Now,
So I never knew that about morning glory.
yeah, I think they may poison them now to keep you from using them for that. If you buy a pack of morning glories, but I mean, I went on a trip. I couldn't believe it. It lasted for hours and hours. I think I was listening to a ball game actually, and it sounded like I thought it was all humor. I thought it was all a joke, and I was laughing my ass off, you know, and I'm thinking, what an entertaining joke this is. This is funny, but it wasn't. It was just a ball game, but it was
It's a regular ball game.
Yeah, it was so distorted in my mind. It was one of the funniest things I'd ever heard in my life, you know? So,
Yeah.
so anyway, I could go on and on and on. I don't want to take up your course doing this, but
It's all good.
yeah, I want to share with you though as much as I can. And I want you to realize that you're on a journey that you said it most wisely yourself. That's a lifelong journey. You know, I was 9 years in a cell, and it kept me occupied, kept me learning and growing all the time. And one of my friends who I don't think read my book, although he said he did many years ago, and I've known him for 30, 40 years. When I first got out of prison, he was one of my friends, and he finally, I guess, read the book just a few days ago, and he kept getting so excited all of a sudden, because all of a sudden he's really seeing the book, I guess, you know.
Oh,
whether he read it all those years ago, I don't know, but now he's so he's getting
he's got the excitement that comes from the book because it's a powerful book.
That's exactly it. So he was like, he's been on the phone with me all of a sudden, all the time now about, oh, my friend read the book. He said it must be channeled. He said, I've never read anything like this. He says, must have been channeled. My wife said to me today, she said, maybe it was Ron, maybe it was channeled. I said, in a way it was, because I keep getting more information all the time flowing through me. expanding
Yeah.
on the ideas that I had and making things more sensible. All of a sudden that, you read things, but you don't really see them or hear them. And how Saturn, for example, and the saints, when they wear these, they always depict them with a circle over their head. That's the ring of Saturn. In the heavens, you look at Saturn, it's got that ring around it. So what? So anyways, this. But here's the thing I want you to do. I want you to really learn all the symbols, because that is the crux of where you need to be. I'm going to share some stuff with you here with my book, which my workbook that I want you to learn. Let me get over here and share the screen. Hopefully it's open. Let me see if it is. I had opened it last night. I hope it's still open. Okay, share screen. No, it's not open. This is your chart. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay.
I emailed you because I saw that on my chart. It has the time at 10:30. That's the one I gave you, but that ended up being the wrong time. Which I talked to my mother this week, and she gave me the right time. She confirmed the time. So I screwed up the time when I gave it to you originally.
That's no problem. Let me show you why. Let me try to let me get okay. So you can't see the screen now, can you?
No, I cannot.
Okay, I'm just going to edit the chart.
Okay.
Edit chart. It's a simple little move here. So what time were you born?
12:47 p.m.
12:47. Okay. Okay. All right. So let's go back. You see the chart now?
Yes.
Okay. This is the corrected chart.
Okay.
So I'll send you over a copy of that later. So let's just take a look at your chart here, first of all. You have you have an amazing chart. Well, one of the things that's interesting about this chart is your Mars and Saturn are joined together at birth, and they're afflicting the sun. I would expect you to have some major injuries during your life, or your back. Have you got problems with your back?
Recently, I have. Over the last year or two, I have. Yeah, but that was the first. I haven't really had many injuries up until that point.
Well, this is there's two meanings for this conjunction. One is you're a good fighter, which you may not live that life, but you are a good fighter. Mars and Saturn are joined together. Those are called malefics. But you have Saturn here. Let's go over here real quick. Can you see the mouse here when I move it?
Yes.
Okay, you have the moon in Sagittarius at 2 degrees Sagittarius. Your moon is on my sun. My sun's 5 degrees Sagittarius. Your moon is also joined together with Uranus. You see it here?
Yes.
Okay, I want you to learn all these symbols and understand them.
Okay.
Uranus is the planet of astrology, and it's the planet of highly developed intuition. It also rules the new age things like the computers, the computer software, all that stuff is Uranus stuff. And your soul is tied in with that Uranus very powerfully. And it's at one degree, and it's opposing, no, it's opposing Venus. You've had relationship issues. Venus shows there's been emotional upheavals in your relationships. You've been married. You said you're married.
I'm getting married soon.
Okay. Were you married before?
No, I wasn't married before, but it was a situation that kind of was going to lead to marriage, then it split off. So I was never married before, but I
Okay.
was in long-term relationships.
So that's what I'm seeing. The conflicts you were having were pretty intense emotionally, probably in
Yeah.
that relationship. There's a tendency anytime you see Venus afflicted, Venus is affection, and it's opposing the moon, which is emotional upheaval. And it's with Uranus as well. Uranus means unexpected, sudden, unexpected things. It's the planet of surprise and shock. So that's opposing Venus as well. So it's not like a lot of other afflictions. I'm looking around the chart. You're born at noon, right around noon, 12 p.m. So that puts the sun at the midheaven. You see this point here?
Yes.
Okay, so the top of the chart would be, it tells you the time of the chart is accurate, because if it was 12 midnight, the sun would be down here,
Okay.
below the earth, but it's above the earth right here. I'm still confused with this Mars Saturn. You have Saturn's in Libra. It rules that planet, that sign. Mars is in a stabilization because it's in Libra. You're going to have to be very circumspect and careful, though, about your back, because this can cause long-term problems, skeletal problems. Mars is inflammation, and Saturn is a skeletal frame. And when these two are together, it can be some rough times for injuries in terms of the back area. Let's see what else. Now, Mars and Saturn are also affecting the sun. You should have had a lot of issues with your father. Were you in a lot of, was he estranged from you on some level?
No, he wasn't estranged. He was an older man when I was born. He was 62 years old when I was born. So we had a good relationship. It was kind of, he passed away when he was 84, so that was 20 years ago, over 20 years ago now.
How old were you?
I was 21 or 22, 21.
So you had a good relationship with him?
I did. I mean, it was a tough relationship because he was a military guy, but it wasn't bad. I mean, I definitely, I learned a lot from him.
It's interesting, a military guy. The Saturn and Mars joined together. Saturn rules the father, and Mars is the military. That fits a lot. Generally, there would be a strict environment, though, with a person like that.
Yeah, it was pretty strict.
Okay, probably to your benefit, and not necessarily a negative thing. But
right.
The moon with Uranus. Was your mother a teacher?
She was at one point, but not for a long time. She taught for a few years.
What did she teach? What did she teach?
Just like elementary school.
Okay.
Yeah.
That shows up real strong here with a moon Uranus conjunction. Uranus rules knowledge, and the moon is the mother. And Sagittarius gives a spiritual kind of side to that. Is she pretty open to religious ideas and teaching?
Yeah, she's open to that.
Because that the sign Sagittarius is where we get our word sagacious or wise. Okay.
Okay.
You also have Jupiter in Scorpio, conjunct Pluto. It's a wide orb. It's a 6-degree orb, but that's still there. This gives wisdom, and it's also sex. That's Pluto rules desires and sex. So you'd be kind of wise in all those areas. Okay. So we haven't got all the progressions on this chart, and we don't have the transit energies in this chart. I just did the natal chart, so just seeing what I can pick up on that.
Yeah, that's really impressive.
Let me stop sharing here. Okay, so we'll be spending more time with it. What I want to do first is I want to get back to my workbook. Let me do that. See if I can do this here. All right. Okay. See if I can open it. How's your time? Okay.
Oh yeah, I've got plenty of time.
Oh, that's good. Okay. Okay. Okay, good. All right. When you're studying astrology, a lot of people ask me about books to read and all that. And there's a lot of stuff out there that just takes up your time and doesn't help you much. But there's a lot of things in astrology that you will assimilate just by reading things. You'll just constantly be sucking it up. And when you're reading something, I find most of what goes under the name of teaching astrology. Can you see this page, by the way?
Yes.
Okay, good. Is it's kind of the rote stuff. You'll read it over and it'll give you some essential early meanings of things, and it's okay. But the real messages and the real knowledge is I'm going to teach you how to kind of interpret. For example, if you look at these 3 rings here, you got the planets' energies, you got the signs themselves, and then you've got the house position. So the houses are the 12 houses of the zodiac, which is the first house. In your case, you have Mars, Saturn rising in the east when you're born. It's called the ascendant, the rising sign. So if you take and put a planet in that area, it changes its color, so to speak. It changes it takes on a different meaning. And it becomes either more powerful or less powerful, or it becomes more colored by the different influences, the signs and the houses that are around that. Now, if you look at the planets are energies. The signs are the attitudes that they carry. And the houses are the areas of life affected. So, for example, the 4th house rules the home. You may not have a planet in that house, but it's the indicator very often in the 4th house will tell you something about the early childhood and early home life. The 7th house is said to be the house of marriage, and it often reflects your marriage partner or your mate. It can be a business partner or a marriage partner. And so the signs, the houses, and all these things interact to mean something in your life, but The fourth consideration, of course, is going to be, besides the planets, the signs, the houses, is going to be their aspects that they have between each other. And the aspects are kind of like the angles that they form. If they're squaring off to each other, they form a cross. If they're opposed to each other, it's part of a cross. If you draw a cross, just to draw a cross, you see the points of that cross are either opposed to each other or they're 90 degrees apart. So these are called stress aspects. And the stress aspects, the stress ones are usually cause suffering or pain. And lessons, they're lessons to learn. Sometimes we have to learn the hard way, like I do. So when we're looking at a chart, we're going to start to integrate all these three elements, as well as the aspects that the planets have with each other. So when I say aspects, you can have a conjunction like you do with Saturn and Mars in your chart. Saturn and Mars is a conjunction. When they're together, means they're conjunct. Let me see.
How closely, they have to be a certain degree apart from each other or within each other's range to be conjunct?
Good, yes. Now, the rules are meant to be defining things, but they're not always 100%. Like I've learned over the years that nothing's written in stone, if you would. You know, that the minor planets, there's major planets, minor planets, and there's sun and the moon. The sun and the moon have wide orbs because they're very powerful. And by that, I mean they have wide orbs, and the tolerance of an aspect can go a little further because of the wide orb they have. So, for example, the minor planets, for example, we call them Pluto, Uranus, and Neptune. Those are minor planets, we call them. Pardon me. Those planets have roughly a six degree orb. The major planets, which are Jupiter and Venus, Mars, Saturn, those planets have an 8 degree orb. So it's let's say, you know, about 2 degrees more than the minor planets. And then the sun has as much as 15 degree orb, and the moon about a 12 degree orb. So that you're going to learn those things as you go along, and you're going to start to understand them. But it's something that the workbook will help you learn, because I have a lot on aspects there. I find that the aspects are more important than pretty much anything else in the chart. And if you think about it, they're the angles of the planet, the angles they're making. And by that, you can call them the angels, if you would. And that's what I think the early astrologers understood them as, angelic influences or angels. The words are very similar, in fact. So there's a psalm in the Psalms. It said, the sun shall not smite thee by day, nor the moon by night. Well, I've heard of sunstroke. I've never heard of moonstroke. But the ancients called it lunacy, which means to be the effect of the mind. And the moon does have that effect. In fact, we have a full moon, I think, today, don't we?
I think so, yes.
So very often people act in aberrant behaviors when there's a full moon, because the gravitational pull on the earth is very extreme. And my theory is, my hypothesis, that my son would always say, Dad, it's not a theory, it's a hypothesis. Okay. So he's a scientist and he always corrects me. But my hypothesis is that the effects that you see on lunacy, or people behaving irrationally, because of full moons is caused by the fluids in the inner ear that are being affected, just like the earth and the oceans can raise two or 3 inches.
Right.
Expanded, right? And I think it affects the inner ear the same way. And what I've noticed about people that have a lot of aberrant behavior is they usually have a different walk, a different gait about them. It's a little odd.
Let's see.
And so we even say somebody's off balance.
Right.
You know, and I think it depicts what's going on, that they feel a discomfort inside them that they don't understand because of the pressure of that energy. And so that can translate itself into, I believe, so if somebody's maybe pretty psychotic or neurotic, it can agitate all those things. And that's just a thought I've kind of formulated over the years, because I've observed when one of the situations when I was in Ohio State Penitentiary, I tried to kill myself. I tried to commit suicide. And I was sent to Lima State Hospital for the criminally insane. And I spent quite a lot of time there, a couple of years. And I began to observe a lot of things. I was always a good astrologer, and I could do charts. I did them all the time with my friends and people that were in there. And I began to notice the behavior of people that were really aberrant, and then see how they behaved, and the way they walked even was always different. Wasn't always identifiable, but I could see it. And I think a lot of things that we think kind of mysterious, if you ask most police departments, they'll tell you that there's more activity and more criminal behavior and more crazies out there on full moons than there is any other time. So anyway, so let me get out of here. I want to share with you, if I can, something else here. Okay. Okay. Let me try to get back into. Now I sent you the workbook I sent you has a lot on aspects. I want you to really learn them. Most important right now is that you learn the symbols, and I'm going to help you learn those. That's my search. Okay. Go back to the search again. Oh, here's where I sent you the book. Okay, good. Oh, good, I got it. Okay. Now this is, I'm going to go back to, good, I got it. Good. Okay, I'm going to come up here. Okay, can you see this screen?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I sent you. Right, so that's my son when he was very little, very small, and my wife, and that's his chart. So Here's what I want you to do. I want you to first memorize this little sentence. And
Okay.
Martha visits every Monday and just stays until noon, period.
Okay.
If you learn that, you'll learn the planets from the sun out. Okay. M's for Mercury, V visits is Venus, every is Earth, Monday is Mars, asteroid belt is and, Jupiter's the next. Okay, and just is Jupiter, stays is Saturn, Uranus is until, noon is Neptune, and period is Pluto.
Gotcha. Perfect. Yeah.
Okay, once you know that, you can always recount very quickly all the planets from the sun out. Okay, Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, asteroids, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. One more thing I want to share with you. I'm not too big on asteroids.
Okay. Okay.
Most astrologers are getting into it. I asked the question, in fact, in the book that you've got, the Cosmic Key to Astrological Prediction, there's a lot of pages where I share my thoughts about things. And there's one section in that book that I talk about asteroids and these other things. One of the things you can do, and you can get confused really easily in astrology, is you start trying to add all these things that people add. And you've got millions of possibilities with just the planets, the signs, and the houses, and with the aspects. You've got millions of opportunities of interpretation. Now, for most people, then they add Juno or they add a different asteroid. Now they've got two more factors, and they start interpreting them.
Right.
I say to my fellow astrologers, I say, why do you just use those two asteroids? Oh, because they're big. I say, well, there are thousands of asteroids, and why do you just pick those two? It doesn't make sense. If they all have an influence, then you should be using them all. And there's something else called part of fortune in astrology. And these are Arabic parts. There's a part of fortune, and everybody, in most charts, they put it in there. And it's supposed to have a great influence on your fortune in your life. Here's what's weird. Nobody tells you that the Arabic parts, there's not just a part of fortune, but there's a part of death, there's a part of marriage, there's a part of children, there's a part of everything. And,
Right.
and if you want to, I've done this, and of course I had years in my cell in prison to play with all this stuff, that you can go crazy with all this. You get so many factors in a chart, you're going to be so confused. So is the client. They're not going to know what's going on. So I have this. Could you give me some ice instead of that? Just give me a cup of ice. Thank you. My wife's trying to keep me hydrated here. So this is. You're going to also, over the time, and don't fret about, oh, it's so much to learn, because there always is going to be. You'll never quit learning. I mean, I could spend 9 years in a cell, preoccupied with astrology and never lose interest because there's so much there. And so when you look at the signs, for example, Aries has a ruler. It's Mars as rules. It's a fire sign. Taurus has a ruler. It's Venus, the planet. And it's an earth sign. If you go back down here to Saturn, Saturn rules Capricorn. It's an earth sign. Jupiter is a fire sign. It's ruled by Sagittarius. Now, they also have their places where they're called exalted or their detriments. For example, Venus rules Libra. And its opposite sign of Libra is is Aries rather. So if you put a planet in a sign that is out of kind of character for that sign, it doesn't work as well. For example, Venus in Aries, which is a planet of Mars, a sign of Mars, and it's very fiery and it's very impetuous. Venus doesn't do too well in that sign. And so in your case, for example, Saturn is exalted and even though it's not in its own sign Capricorn, it's exalted in Libra.
Okay.
What does that mean? It means that your Saturn, which is your ability to take things apart, to analyze things, to organize things in a structural pattern, is real strong in your chart because it's in Libra. It means it works well in that sign. If it had been in Aries, it would have a rough time. Now Mars, interestingly enough, Mars is in a sign it has a hard time with in your chart.
Okay.
Because Mars is in Libra. Here's a planet, a Mars, which is supposed to be a planet of aggression and kind of force and violence, maybe, in a sign of peace of Libra. You see what I'm coming from?
So just
yeah.
That's actually it's interesting because that's kind of how I think too.
Do you really?
Yeah, like like you said, I have the ability to fight, but I don't like fighting. I never like fighting. Like I try to stay away from it, but if I ever have to do it, I can do it pretty good.
Yeah. You'd be a good fighter, and much more of a strategist, a strategic fighter. Because you're very, your mind works in a different way than most people's. That's why you would be good at things like judo, jujitsu, forms of fighting that take high intelligence, and not necessarily the power of the force. A good judo, I've studied judo all my life, and jujitsu and martial arts. I've studied Hebrew, the Israeli form of fighting. I love martial arts. And there's an interesting scripture. There's when they came to take Christ one time, and they tried to attack him, and it said that he moved through them and they couldn't touch him. And I think he would have been martial art trained in a spiritual way. He knew what he was doing. And so when I'm in martial arts, when I'm fighting, if somebody attacks me, my point is to bring their energy into focus for them to fall, not for me to fall. And you know what I'm saying? Like if you move towards me or you try to throw a punch, I want to move that power in a different direction for me and let them make the fall instead of me. So that's the art of the martial arts. And I call what I'm teaching you and going to teach you over the months. I have a feeling we're going to be together a long time. I don't usually make that as a promise, but I just feel something about you, that we're on a journey together that's going to be somewhat very intense. So I talk to people, I say, you have to learn in life the spiritual judo, learn how to deflect attacks in a spiritual way. Christ was a master of all that. He wasn't going to be taken until he was ready. So anyway, I want you to kind of just take your time and go through all this stuff, try to learn it. Realize that there's fire, earth, air, and water signs. You see the elements over here. The fire signs are just what they say. They're quick temper, they're fiery, they're passionate, they're all that stuff. So when you're doing a chart, you're going to be looking at, say, oh, how much of this is in my chart? How much fire do I have? How much water do I have? Which is emotional, sensitive, psychic, all that stuff. How much earth do I have, which is practical and down to earth? And so you'll start to see how much air do I have? That's more the intellectual communicating things. Air signs, Gemini, the mind, air signs, Libra, which is, balance and relationships and all that stuff. And then Aquarius, which is more highly evolved socially, a social order, changing the tenor of our earth by influencing it intellectually. So anyway, so you learn all this as you're going through, and you start to see a pattern. And when you're doing charts, you're going to understand. Do you have a dog?
No, I don't.
Oh,
I
okay.
thought you heard a dog. No, it's just my chair.
Oh,
Loud chair.
all right.
Yeah.
We got a big Newfoundland over here, 120 pounds, 130 pounds probably.
Wow.
So he's
See it.
he's at my feet. You can't see him here, but he's here. So
Okay.
okay, so let me keep moving. So I put all this in there for you. You can study it, take your time. Don't get overwhelmed by any of it, you know. Just
Yeah, it'll take some time to get everything, but I'll start breaking it down.
yeah, I think in my book I have this astrological influence of our languages.
Mhm.
The
Yeah.
word consider came from sidereal. That meant to be in harmony with the stars. Con means to be together with. Sidereal is the stars. So consider, the word itself meant in the original meaning was to look at the stars to see whether it's a good idea or not to do something.
Wow.
You see, so the word disaster is another astrological word. Discord in the stars, asteroid, astros. So that word meant problems in the stars. Israel comes from three roots. Isis, the moon god, Ra, the sun god, and Elohim, the planets.
Yeah.
Okay. Influenza, the word itself comes from the influence of the stars. That's where it came from. So people used to believe that influenza was caused by the astrological influences. And it is, by the way. I did a lot of work on the viruses when it started hitting and the planetary energies that cause it. And I even went back in history and I can show the same aspects that caused the different 1918 influenza outbreaks and different things. And it repeats itself. So lunacy, of course, is from the moon. Panic, by the way, comes from Pan, the goat god. And what's the goat god? Pandora's box. Pandora is the unleashing of all the ills of the earth by opening that box called Pandora's box. And
Wow.
that's from the goat god Pan, which is Capricorn again. See it?
Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah.
Okay, sagacious means from Sagittarius. Sagacious. I just made these sentences up just to show you how many words can be used in that are astrological. Scapegoat comes from Capricorn, the goat. What is scapegoat? It's accusing somebody else for something that happens, right? And what is Satan about? The devil, the serpent. It's called the accuser of our brethren. He who accused our brethren before God both day and night. So the scapegoating is finding someone. In Israel, they send a goat out into the desert to die for the sins of their nation. They still do that today. It's a ceremony.
I see.
Okay. So chronological. Chronological comes from chronos, again, which is numbers, and chronometers, watches. Chrono is the watch. Logical is, of course, order. So, so these words are all related to astrology, actually. Pandemic comes from Pan, the goat god, again.
Wow. Yeah, that's.
And how about this word, capricious? Where do you think it comes from?
Capricorn.
Good for you. Gotcha, you got it. So people that are capricious, people that are have satirical humor. That's where do you think that came from? Saturn, right?
Right.
Satirical humor is poking fun at other people. That's what Saturn does. Likes to accuse, right? So you got pictures of back in the days of Nixon with a big, long, sloopy nose.
Right.
Or somebody with big ears, maybe. You see,
Yeah.
that's all satirical humor. So Saturn in your chart, once you start understanding it, you're gonna, I mean, I'll teach you so many things that'll really be mystery breaking. I mean, for example, do you know where um, uh, do you know where the word satisfy came from?
Not exactly. I don't know the history of it. No.
Listen to the word sat, to satisfy.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay,
That makes
now
sense.
watch this. Dissatisfy is an afflicted Saturn.
Okay. Wow.
Now watch, you'll see this. For example, when you look at a chart and you see Venus afflicting Saturn, for example,
Yeah.
that means a person's constantly dissatisfied with their relationship. Why? Venus rules love and relationships.
Right. That's
Okay. So if you see that planet afflicted, it tells you that there's problems in their marriage because they're never happy with their marriage. They're always finding fault with them, and they're always dissatisfied with what they're in. So anyway, so when you see, and then you can see the opposite, you can see what satisfies them. The word satiate came from Saturn, by the way. And what does satiation do? It's you satiate your senses when you eat too much.
Right.
All right. You so how do you avoid that how would I call it, that incorrect behavior? You fast.
Oh, okay. I see.
See, so
Yeah.
what we do when we're troubled and we're tormented by a lot of negative stuff, we generally overeat.
Right.
And why do you think we do that? Because what did the mother do when you were a child every time you cried? She stuck a nursing mother, either a bottle or a breast in your mouth and fed,
Yes.
right?
Right.
So food is a comfort thing, right? It's the way we can stop crying for a while.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you see people that are constantly overeating, then, including me when I do it, all of us, the only remedy for that is fasting. That's why the early Christians were into it so much, which was to deny their senses. The word repent means to pent up, and repent meaning to go back to this pent up state.
I see.
Of self-denial.
Yeah, that makes total sense, actually.
What's it again?
That makes complete sense, actually.
Exactly.
When you think about it that way, because that makes more sense than what we're told is what repent means.
Exactly. Good for you. It's funny because I hear you in a different way than most people hear you. I hear you on a level that actually excites me, because the fact is there's a scripture says them that have ears to hear and eyes to see, and there's those that don't. Okay. What I pick up, and I have almost instantly with you, is that you have the ears to hear. When I get on a subject that's spiritual, you reverberate to it right away.
Yeah, for sure.
You know what I'm saying? And
yeah.
It's like the way you reverberated to my book. And I see in you something very exciting that excites me. The student is always edified by the hearer. Did I say that right? By the teacher is edified by the student, by the hearer. So, when I communicate with you, when I get on certain subjects, I can always see where your interest lies. I'd almost rather make you a metaphysician, which is really a physician of the soul, than an astrologer. I'll take you on the astrology because you need it. You need it to understand all this mysteries. But your real purpose in life, I feel, is to touch people's lives in a little more profound way. And that's working with the subconscious, the soul.
Yeah.
The scripture says, seeing you purified your soul in the disciplining of your spirit, in the unfeigned love of your brethren. Now think about what that just said. The soul is your subconscious. So what is the purpose of our life? It says, you purifying your soul. You want to purify your soul. In the disciplining of your what? Your conscious mind. That's your spirit. I'm in good spirits today. That's talking about my conscious mind. But I may be suffering on a soul level, which is my subconscious. And
Right.
you see where I'm coming from? So when we're dealing with human beings, we're dealing with people that are very complex, that are multi-layered in a way. And they don't so often see their sickness or their
Right.
problems, you see?
Yeah. I see.
For the metaphysician, his job or her job is to heal the soul of that individual. That's what Christ did. That's what his disciples were trained to do. That's where I want you to be eventually. I don't want to just be reading charts. Oh, it's a good day to go shopping. Bullshit, excuse me. That's not astrology. But for a lot of astrologers, that's what it's about. What I'm saying is the real astrologers are the metaphysicians. They're the doctors of the soul. And so when we communicate and commune with each other, it's to reach into the soul of the being and not just the surface of it all, which is not really telling you anything.
Yeah. And the astrology gives you the tools to be able to see beneath the surface, basically, because without that, you can't, it'd be way harder to analyze what's going on with the person.
You got it. Yeah. So words or language, there's so much going on here that we just don't even see, So you, in your own time, you can, I tell people to sip each day. That's 15 minutes minimum on sales and marketing. Now and I used to be vice president of marketing and sales for several companies in my past. And I was using spiritual tools to teach people. I'd get up to lecture, and I've never been a prepared lecturer. I don't say, what am I going to say today? It's kind of like it comes to me, right? And I'm like a racehorse at the back of a room listening to people talking, and most of them are saying nothing. You know what I mean? They're all got their little stuff they're saying, but they're not really getting to the soul of the person.
Right.
And I remember one time lecturing, and I ended up giving a talk on what are your expectations. And I said, basically your expectations are your faith. If you think people are going to continually screw you over in life, they're going to. If you believe you're going to be poor all your life, you're going to be poor. If you believe, whatever you believe, you're going to create it. As a man believeth in his heart, so it is.
Right.
So and then so I start talking, and then the next thing I do, talking about what are your expectations? What are your, I said the word inspect means to look within. Respect means regardfully look at. The word inspect is an amazing word. Introspection. All these words are powerful words, but people don't spend time kind of understanding that, we are constantly creating our own bed we lay in. And we don't know that we're doing that because of our poor expectations. And anyway, enough of that. So I always found when I was vice president of marketing sales, my job was to try to get people out of the sleep they're in and realize that they've got to change their mind before they'll change their life. And, so anyway, enough of that. So I say, 15 minutes on sales and marketing, 15 minutes on inspirational, motivational, 15 minutes on your profession minimum every day. And if you would do 15 minutes of any one of these subjects, what actually happens is you won't do 15 minutes, because once you get in it, you get going. You spend an hour, and all of a sudden you're where you belong. Okay. I also try to get my students to start teaching early. Teach what you know to others, even if it seems to you it's too little, because teaching others is a path to the highest learning. The same with you as a programmer. The more you teach, the more you're going to learn.
I see that.
The teacher is ever the student. Teaching forces you to grow and learn. Even if you only know the basic. I tell my students that she says, oh, I don't know enough, like you two, you know it all, right? I said, I don't know it all, but I do know.
There's no way to, there's no knowing it all, right? There's always something more.
It always is, always going to be more. So knowledge kept is knowledge wasted. I tell people, I said, get out there and teach, even if it's and don't be afraid to say you don't know the answer. That's another thing with people. They teach, I got to know everything. I know you don't. You know more than the average person does because you've studied astrology. So, so anyway, where to start? These are just little things I've collected for you over the years and how to start becoming a good astrologer. Okay. All right. Another thing is realizing that your service is a gift. The scripture says, I remember the thing with Paul, it said, what is that I partake of your material things and then in that I share with you my spiritual things. And it took me a long time to learn that because I always thought, I can remember when I used to struggle with charging anything. And you know what I mean? You've been there?
Because I started a business a long time ago, 2004, 2005. For me, I was about 21, 22 when I started. And I struggled with charging for a while until I really felt comfortable at asking for people for what, we all got to make a living here. And, we don't have to be eating crumbs, you know what I mean? So I totally understand, where that comes from and kind of being reluctant to charge what you think it's worth at first and then kind of finding your way with that. So I totally understand that.
It's a lesson we all have to learn. I had a student that I knew his father was a preacher in Illinois, and I used to go to their church and became very good friends with. I was always an astrologer to everybody, but he had two sons, beautiful kids. One of them was really just an amazing spiritual kid, and he was getting ready to go to college, and he was leaving for school to go to college, another school, and before he left, they had a cemetery in the back of the church, and he came into his parents one day and said, Dad, I feel there's something trying to pull me in the grave. And of course they discounted it, it says, oh, come on, everything's fine, you're okay. And he kept saying, Dad, something's trying to pull me in this grave. So anyway, long story short, he takes off to go to school. He's driving across the plains of Illinois, open fields, nothing around, except highway. And he runs a red light and gets side hit with a semi truck. And his body is thrown into a graveyard.
Wow.
True story. And he's dead, of course. And this beautiful kid, who was one of the most amazing kids, his brother, many years later, 35 years, maybe 40 years, I don't know how long I'm 80 some years old, but these were all my friends and family almost, a guy calls me if it wants to be a student. Turns out it's his brother. He moved to Florida.
Wow,
and he told me his dad had passed away and bequeathed him all his inheritance. And he wanted to be my student. And it was such a shock to see a grown man who I only knew as a kid,
Right.
And so I told him I charged, I forget what, $1,200 I think I charged for the course.
Yeah.
And he leaves the money in an envelope to me. And I open it after he drove off, and he starts to drive off, and there's $2,000 in there instead of 1,200. And
Yeah.
I'm shocked, you know. And he come to a couple of classes of mine before he became a student. So anyway, and I run outside, and he's already left. His car is going down the street, and I call him up. I said, you know, my man, you know, you left me $2,000. The course is only 1,200. He said, yeah, you're worth that, Ron. He said, stop undercharging, will you?
Yeah.
And from that day on, oh, and then he signs up for another course. He signs up for another class after he's gone through this, and he gives me another $2,000. And I said to him, I said, you know, I guess I'm being taught something here. I said, I'll start charging what you think I'm worth. And I did from that day on. I never had a qualm about it. But it was like it took somebody to see my value,
Yeah.
and understand that what I was giving was worth that much money, and not to feel guilty because I'm charging too much. So we have other people that teach us things sometimes, you know. It took this young kid that was just a toddler, not a toddler, but he was a teenager when I knew him, to come into my life and teach me a lesson.
Yeah. He knew the
Then
value.
I found out why he was studying so hard. He was building a software program. You'd like this one. Building a software program with the millions of dollars his dad gave him. I mean, I don't know how much it was, but he hired software developers to develop a astrological program. It's a game.
A game. Okay.
Mars, and Mars is a warrior, and Venus is a lover, and he develops all these tools, and then you, based on your chart, what's going on in your chart, as it moves and the transits form in the chart, all those things come to play in that game.
That's so interesting. Yeah, that's great.
So, and he has an autistic boy, and so there's a way to tell what's the most valuable part of a influence in a chart of a child, and that's the planet that's the closest energy to the sun. And I said to him, I said, you know, that, you know, your son has Mars closest aspect to the sun. Get him in martial arts. He says, but he's autistic. I said, you do it and you'll see a different boy. He put his boy into martial arts, and the teacher loved this kid. And anyway, he started blossoming, just changing. All of a sudden, Dad, did you see that? Dad, did you see what I did? Did you know? It's like all of a sudden his heart was into this so big that he started communicating again. Whoa. And he opened up, and his life changed. He was so excited and so happy. And the father said, I haven't seen a totally different boy. Wow. That's the value of astrology right there. Yeah. So anyway, I could keep telling you stories. I got to stop it. So
it's all good. I got the time.
I say astrology is a spiritual tool which has as its roots the most profound theology. Okay. Paul said it most perfectly. If we have sown unto you spiritual things, is it a great thing that we shall reap your carnal things? Or as another scripture says it, a laborer is worthy of hire. So, you know, trying to get people over, my students particularly, over this sense of not being worth anything.
Sure, I get it.
That their knowledge isn't worth something. It's worth a lot. And people like you value it, but not everybody will. Right. And I just admire the way you came at it too, by the way. Okay, so master the tools of your trade. Now I wrote this back so many years ago, but the computers.
Yeah.
Computer literate.
I glanced at some of this
before we are really into the computer times. Okay, here's where I want to take you now. This is going to be one of the most important pages right here. Okay. All the planets are made up of these three symbols. the circle, the crescent, and the cross. And once you understand this and you understand the planet's symbols, you'll start to really understand the planets. It's like people that don't know the root of, it's like English is a kind of a bit strange language in some respects. A doesn't really stand for anything. B doesn't stand for anything. If you go to a lot of other languages like Chinese, every symbol has a meaning. You know, it's not just a letter, it's something that has a meaning. And in astrology, it's the same way. So if you look at the sun, it's a circle with a dot on it inside. It's centralized, focused spirit. That's what it is. And it was called, in the old days, it was called Ruach, which was the Holy Spirit. And then the crescent was the soul, the Holy Ghost. And if you look at it, it looks like a magnifying glass. And that's what your soul does. It magnifies everything. So whatever the spirit puts in it, it either buys it or doesn't, and it generally buys it.
Right.
So whatever goes in comes out into your experience. That's the cross.
I see.
Every planet's made of those three symbols. Okay. If you look at the sun, it's a circle with a dot in it. If you look at Venus, it's a circle on top of a cross. So what is being subjugated then? The senses, the physical world is subject to what? The spiritual world of the spirit with a circle over a cross. If you look at Mars, it's the very opposite. Mars is the cross. We use a broken arrow or an arrow, but it's actually a cross over the spirit.
Okay.
Circle is dominated by the cross. And that's the sign of suffering, of course, right?
Right.
Or pain, if you would. If you look at Saturn, Saturn symbol has the cross dominating the crescent. It kind of looks like a double crescent. It's the way Saturn's drawn, it's like a serpent. And the cross is on top of that crescent, that soul. So what happens with that? The physical body, the senses dominate the soul. That's like Rosemary's Baby, the possessed soul. It's completely controlled by the defilement of the soul, of the spirit. I mean, of the body, rather. The five senses, if you would. Okay, all of that. And if you look at Neptune, you'll see a crescent, and then you'll see a cross inside of that crescent, piercing the soul. And that's the planet of Neptune, which is a planet of suffering, spiritual suffering generally. It's a symbol of Christ, crucified one. And Uranus is like two ears, two crescents with a cross in the middle. And it's like a planet of intense listening, intuition, the knowledge that it doesn't require money to learn from, the intuitive side. So all of these are related to the planets. When I look at the spirit, the soul, the body, can you see me here?
Yes.
The Father, the Mother, the Son, the seed, the fecundation of that seed, and the birth, which is occurring in the body or the physical senses. The word is made flesh, okay? So what does that mean? If you seed it into the soul, if you keep saying, I'm sick and tired, and you seed this word into the soul, and it gives birth of an experience, which is, in the case of sick and tired, it's both fatigue and illness.
Wow.
Every time you say he's a pain in the ass, you set yourself up for hemorrhoids. Or worse, because you've seeded the word into the soul, which fecundates it. And what does the soul relate to? Emotion. That's the soul, the crescent, the Holy Ghost. Where do ghost visions and dreams come from, my friend?
From the
Think
soul.
about it. Where do ghost visions and dreams come from? The subconscious.
Yeah.
And so holy only means integrated, the Holy Ghost. The Holy Spirit is the conscious, willful mind. It's very rational, whereas the soul is emotional. The soul relates to feeling. The more feeling you say the word with, the more it implants itself in the soul. So the more feeling, what kind of feeling what kind of feeling would he's a pain in the ass have? Anger towards somebody else? Anger is
Yeah.
emotion. The
Right.
more you say that word, he's a pain in the ass. The more you say that, the more it gets seated. And then what happens? It becomes part of your physical form. You see where I'm
Right.
going?
Yeah, I see.
So it's not what goeth in your mouth that defiles you. It's what? It's what comes out of your mouth that defiles you.
Right.
So when we're dealing with these planets, we're dealing with these three symbols. Okay?
Okay.
Okay, I want you to listen to couple scriptures. For there are three that bear witness in heaven. Remember, heaven's within you. You know, it's not, you know, there's a heaven out here, we call it astrological heaven, and there's a heaven there that influences the heaven within. But it's the heaven inside of you that the scriptures is trying to teach us to understand. The kingdom of heaven is neither meat nor drink, but righteousness, joy, and peace in the Holy Ghost. Notice what it says. Okay. Listen to this scripture. This is in John. For there are three that bear witness in heaven, the Father, the Word, and the Holy Ghost. And these three are one. Listen to what Mary said, the Mother of God. And Mary said, my soul doth magnify the Lord, and my spirit rejoiceth in God. Tell me they didn't know the difference between the soul and the spirit?
Yeah, they know the clear
And they didn't know
difference.
the difference between the conscious and subconscious mind? They were masters of all this. The church has kind of corrupted it,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Over
It's kept
time.
people from the real truth.
Yeah.
Okay. And you notice what Mary says, my soul magnifies. You see this magnifying glass here?
Yeah.
That's exactly what's happening. So everything you put in here gets magnified and the word becomes flesh over here. Making sense here?
Yeah, it makes sense. Can you hear me
So
still? Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you still hear me okay?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
You can hear me? Yes?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, good.
But
Okay.
okay.
Okay. Now look at this one. For the word of God is quick and powerful and sharper than any two-edged sword, piercing even to the dividing asunder of soul and spirit. Tell me they didn't know the difference between your soul and your spirit, between your conscious and subconscious mind.
Yeah, I think
And then finally, seeing you purified your souls in obeying the truth through the Spirit unto unfeigned love of the brethren. Okay? Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I can't hear you.
I know what happened.
Oh, you're back again. That's
Oh
good.
yeah, I know what happened.
Anyway, did you get all this message I just
I
gave?
did. Yeah.
Let me tell you a story. When I was in prison, I had a real good friend who's named Larry. Larry was a card shark. And I used to be in colleague with him, you know. And we would rip people off all day. And we'd have 5 people at a table, and I would always win the bet. I'd win the cards because he'd always stack the deck, and he'd do it in front of you. You'd never know he's doing it. He spent hours every day in front of a mirror
Yeah.
learning to stack a deck. And
Okay.
you never catch them, never catch them. So I was kind of his partner in crime, and we did a lot of bad things together, not hurtful things, but
Yeah.
ripped a lot of guys off. And he worked in the inmate store, and I used to help him because I worked on the prison newspaper. So I had access to a lot of prison. I could go around and do things. So he, we'd steal cigarettes out of the inmate store by the case of them. I mean, we had more money than in prison. Money is cigarettes, So anyway, one day I'm going through a lot of transformation, and I'm not eating, and I don't have any desire for food because it tastes like ashes in my mouth. And I don't know what's going on. I just know that I don't sleep nor eat. And first couple of nights, I thought I was just insomnia, but I realized that I wasn't, that I was resting. My body was resting. And usually when you're insomnia, you're tossing and turning and all that. And I began to observe my body was different. It seemed like it was resting. And I was always the hardest guy to wake up in the morning. And my friends around me always make sure I got up because I would just sleep through anything. And so all of a sudden, every time they'd say, "Watson, you up?" Yeah, I'm awake, because I was awake all night. But I didn't realize that part of me that woke up was in frontal lobe. It was the frontal lobe area. It was a different part of me. But I didn't know it at first. I couldn't quite figure it out. I just knew that I could see the guard doing their rounds every night. And my body never slept. So anyway, during this period, I just drank tea and honey. That's all I did. I didn't want any food. I'd go to eat, and the food tastes like it was burnt ashes in my mouth, and I didn't want it. So one day they had cherry tarts on the menu, and that was something new. I thought, well, cherry tart, maybe I can have that. So I go to eat with Larry, and we're waiting in the cafeteria, and we go and get our seat. And I take a part of the cherry tart, the crusted part, and put it in my mouth, and it tastes like burnt ashes. So I said, "Larry, you can have this. You want this?" And Larry gets angry at me, very angry. And because I was stopped doing a lot of the stuff we were doing together. And I was changing in my heart and feeling a lot of love. And so he got very angry. And yeah, Watson, you get religion. That's going to do you a lot of fucking good, Why don't you study law? You might get out of this place,
Yeah.
Instead of wasting your time with all this astrology and the Bible and all that stuff. And, and I didn't feel defensive. I felt no offense. I just felt love towards him. And he's a Capricorn, and he was like angry, and his eyes just flared with anger. So he locks eyes with me. And I remember thinking in my heart, I wish you understood. That's all. I didn't feel any defensive-ness at all, nor offense. I just didn't think, I just felt love towards him. So we lock eyes with each other. All of a sudden, he throws himself in his tray, and he falls over, and he grabs his heart. I said, "Oh my God, Ron, I think I just had a heart attack." So I knew I was so innocent, I didn't see it as related at all. But I get back to my cell, and Larry always came in late because he worked in the inmate store, and his cell was right next to mine. And he walks over, he's in front of my cell while he's waiting for the guard to open his cell. And he says, "Watson, I don't know what you did to me today," but he said, "It still hurts." And that's the first indication, and that he saw that as something I did. But another thing was happening during this period was words would come out of me that I didn't speak. I would say them with great authority and power, but they were not of my thinking, I didn't originate the thoughts. They would just come out of me. So I start to open my mouth, say, I don't know what you're talking about. But instead, the words come out of me this way. I hear myself with great authority saying, Larry, momentum. So I hear myself saying, I'm still getting rid of this cold. So I hear myself saying with great authority, say, Larry, the spirit is sharper than a two-edged sword, and you impaled yourself upon it. Now, I would have never thought of those words. I didn't think of them. But I knew that.
Wow. Yeah, the words were flowing, huh?
And then I was also going through a period where people that I had a lot of anger towards, or potentially, I could be very violent if I had to be. Obviously, in 9 years of imprisonment, you learn to live on the level you have to live. It's not about, excuse me, don't do that anymore. You turn this cheek, you'll turn that one. That's a gross, the world we live in, there's a different world altogether. But there was a guy, a big black dude that just threatened the hell out of me. And every time he'd see me in the shower, I'm gonna get you, honky. He'd always make a remark and intimidate the hell out of me. And I wasn't easily intimidated, believe me. I'm not the biggest guy, but you didn't. I learned in prison, people learn not to mess with me, but he had never learned that yet. So I hooked up with a shank, and I was capable of doing, if I had to do it, I would have hurt him worse than. But he walked by my cell he'd come at the same time every day, and he'd make a remark and try to intimidate me. And I had my cell, certain times of the day you can jimmy your cell, you just throw a little line over it with a knot, you can pull the thing down and get out, because the guards haven't top locked the cells. So you learn to live in there, okay? So I had my cell ready to open, and I sprung out of that cell like a lion, and I grabbed that big dude. And we had screens on this. We were considered dangerous in this cell block because they had screens. You couldn't throw somebody off a four-story tier.
Right. That's screen, yeah.
Yeah. So I grabbed this guy and I throw him up against the screen. And I don't want to say what I said to him, but it was not pretty. If you ever look at me again, mother, I'll cut your fucking head off. I was like dangerous, and I was angry, and I had enough of him. But that's the way you live and learn and communicate in there. If I'd said, please don't do this, it wouldn't have worked,
I know.
Yeah,
I get it.
So anyway, long started. So anyway, so this guy avoided me like the plague. Anytime he saw me, he dropped his head. He didn't want to look at me, because I told him, if you ever look at me again, mother, I said, you're going to die.
Yeah.
So one day I'm going up the back stairs, and I'm going through these changes now. I'm a different person, but he doesn't know this. And I hear this meek voice saying, hey, Ron, or hey, Watson, I think, whatever the case. And I turn around and it's this guy. And he's not looking at me, but he's kind of trying to, Now, hey, don't get mad. I just want to ask you a question. And he's like really being meek, It's so kind of funny because this guy's a brute. He could have tore limbs off of me. He was big. So anyway, I say, yeah, man, what's going on? He says, well, Ron, he said, do you think you're God? I didn't tell you why he thought that, because there were a lot of things happening, magical things. I'm talking control of the rain. I could tell you stories you'd say this guy's crazy, but this guy, do you think you're God? And the words came out of me. I don't think of them, And I just said, well, who do you say I am? Christ said the same words. He said, who do you say I am? He said, well, you're Ron Watts. I said, that's cool, man. Give me 5. And I go my way, But I got out. So it's like spiritual judo, right? But the point being that I was going through all these transitions, and I was going through a period I never needed food. I'd go weeks. I didn't eat. I didn't care. It wasn't because I was fasting. It's just that everything had opened up. There's a part of me that woke up and it was in frontal lobe area.
I see.
You
So,
see?
yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I've had a lot of experiences in my life that are supernatural, really, that, and I'll tell you, I may even share with you some things that I know but don't know yet. I still haven't put it all together. But I was shown one time I was meditating in my cell and I heard voices, see, but I heard voices saying, he said, "Ron, your name is Watson. You were born of a Virgo. You never knew your father." Words that I heard spoke to me. Wow. I was born of a Virgo. My mother was a Virgo, not a virgin.
Okay.
I never knew my father.
Oh,
My name is Watson. You know what the age of Aquarius is?
I know what the age of Aquarius is. Yes.
The water bearer.
Right.
Watson, sun in the sign of the water bearer. Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay. I'm going to open up and share a few things with you. Behold, he cometh as a thief. He cometh as a thief in the night, in which the elements shall be melted in fervent heat. Out of prison he cometh to reign. Them that are born in his generation shall be brought to want. I told my wife 30 years ago, and I've told my previous wife, I said, there's going to be a day when everybody in this world's going to be in want. There's going to be great impoverishment. My wife's from Russia. She came to the land of plenty.
Yeah.
Things are going to change. Them that are born in this generation will be brought to want. And you're seeing the beginning of it right now.
Yeah, I see.
I don't want to go there too much, but, pardon me for coughing. But, so I'm not going to be here too much longer, but I really want to gift you. I want to give to you something that is so much more than astrology. I want to give to you a power of a wisdom and understanding that will not just touch your life, but others, that you'll carry this knowledge on. And you'll promote the truth and the knowledge. And I think, I can give you some things that are just absolutely, if you just go in faith and work with me and just trust the words. And I've given you the 3 scriptures, they're most important scriptures in the world. And that's the praise and give thanks, trust and good.
Yes.
Rejoice evermore, try to be joyful. Know that everything is working together for your highest good. That's the faith of the saints. Okay, it's the faith that no one understands. It makes no sense. It's not logical. So once this becomes part of your soul and your real being, you'll be like Stephen, could be stoned to death, and you'll praise God and thank him.
Right.
You'll stand before that, even that death, and know that's okay. So let me go back a little bit to the, am I digressing too much, do you think?
No, it's all good. Everything's
Okay. You want to take a break?
whenever, I'm free. I don't have any obligations right now for the next hour or two anyway, so.
Okay, all right.
If you want to take a break, that's cool. If not,
Yeah, I'm gonna go pee and then I'll be right back.
yeah, I'll be back in just a few minutes myself.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. Okay, we're back.
All right.
All right. Oh. So let me go back to the workbook a little bit and let's just make sure we cover the main things. Let's see here. What happened here? I wonder why, share screen. Oh, there it is. Mhm. Okay. Okay, I also want you to learn these symbols, the conjunction, the basic ones right now, some semi-sextile is 30 degrees between planets, okay? The semi-square is 45, half of a square, half of a 90 degrees. These are afflicting aspects, the semi-square. The semi-sextile is a good aspect. It's not good or bad, it's just that they have different ways of manifesting themselves as mostly lessons in life. The sextile aspect is very benefic. The square is a challenge, it's a stress aspect. You heard the old Irish blessing, may the road always rise up to meet you, may the sun always be at your back. You know, to me, that's a curse. People that have those, no stress aspects, no challenges, they don't tend to grow and get strong. And so it is with these stress aspects. They develop strength, or they can overwhelm you as well, but they also develop strength. The trine is one of the most benefic aspects. It's 120 degrees. But I've seen charts with people that are double grand trines. That means you've got planets on all 3 points. And a double grand trine is a Star of David, by the way. If you interlock them, put them together upside down, one of them. And I've seen people that have those, and they're basically lazy. Yeah, because everything comes too easy,
Let's see. Makes sense.
Yeah, so I don't, people say, oh, you got too many crosses on your chart. I got a lot of crosses. But it helped make me strong and help me grow. Yeah, there's a lot of pain sometimes associated with those aspects, and so, okay. Okay, you can read this in your own time, but this is where I was talking to you about the different aspect orbs.
Yes.
And analyzing them and getting to understand them. Okay, this is good for you to know, but we've been over a little bit of it, but understand a sign is what a sign is. Think of it as a particular attitude, which colors our actions and activities in life. Now put that planet and the energy center together with a sign and attitude. Put the planet and sign together with a house and a life where it's affected, and you integrate this information together. One of the things you're doing when you're an astrologer is you're integrating all these energies, and pretty soon it'll become natural. And right now it's a struggle because everything is new, but the water signs, Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. If you see that most of the planets are in those signs, gives an emphasis upon the emotional, psychic desire world, sensitive and nostalgic. The need for security, secrecy, and mystery underlies these elements. Touch, intimacy, and set the mood for getting in touch with one's feelings, be they secretive, private, or otherworldly. Intuition is the key to those functioning under mostly water elements in our chart. So I get into, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Does that mean when your sun sign is in one of those water signs, or is that when you have more than or multiple planets in that
Multiple,
water?
yeah, multiple planets. Usually you'll see emphasis on the water. They I break them down to the human temperaments that psychologists have been using for a long time. A lot of this came out of astrology, but they don't give it credit for that.
I see.
So, the waters are more melancholy, kind of deep thinking, tied close to their emotions. Um, it's like the thinkers are the earth, they're called phlegmatic. The airs are the much more intuitors. Fire is choleric. These are terms that you use in psychology a lot. And the thing that a lot of times you see Venus in Gemini. Didn't you have Venus in Gemini?
I think so.
Let me go back and look. Let's do it again. Let's share screen. Yes, you have Venus in Gemini.
Okay.
You know what they say about Venus and Gemini?
I don't.
To reason about love is to lose it.
Sorry.
To reason about love is to lose it.
Okay.
So, you're getting into a place where, love is an intense bonding, unifying force. And people try to reason about it and try to understand it. You can't really understand it,
Yeah.
So, and for Venus and Gemini, it's very often, the problem with relationships is that people don't know how they undo them, and they don't understand how they cripple their relationships. And one of the ways they do that, and you can help and counsel relationship clients that are having conflicts in relationship, if you let them realize something, and that is that every question you have about love, every time you question it, you're setting it up for a disaster. Every time someone says to another person, "Do you love me?" you're planting the seeds of doubt in that person. So the question belies, and underneath it shows doubt and fear.
Right.
And fear can destroy a relationship. So a lot of people, particularly women, are very insecure about their relationships, and what they end up doing is, by their very doubts and their very questions, they sabotage it. Because eventually, if you keep asking the question, you may get an answer you don't want to get.
Right, eventually.
So, I used to do hypnosis once in a while to stop somebody from smoking, for example. And I was really into the power of the subconscious and understanding it. So I did a lot of hypnosis at one point in my life. And I remember a young man that him and his friend had visited us, and he said he wanted to quit smoking. I said, I can help you with that. So I hypnotized him, and I told him that cigarettes would taste terrible. They would be abhorrent to his mouth. He wouldn't want to do it again. So, I don't know how many months went by, maybe almost a year. And this gentleman came back into my experience and was visiting with me. And I wanted so bad to ask him if he's had a cigarette. But if I knew if I asked them the question, I would imply that I doubted that it was effective. The very question would undo maybe what I had done.
Let's see. Yeah,
So,
I'm looking at
so what happened was we were probably visiting for 20, 30 minutes or something. And all of a sudden he was getting ready to leave. And he said, by the way, Ron, I haven't had a cigarette since then. And I took such a relief out of that because I wouldn't dare ask him, even though I wanted to. So every time you see a couple that's in a relationship out constantly asking and questioning whether or not they love you, the person loves you, they're setting themselves up for disaster. Because the question itself belies their lack of faith. Okay, I'm sorry. See, you can't catch a cold from me on Zoom.
Not on Zoom, no.
You're safe, you're safe. So let me find something here. Okay, these are also, once you understand that all the air signs are trine to each other.
Okay.
Gemini, Libra, Aquarius. All water signs are also trine to each other. Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. So in the book I've given you, the Triplicities are called, the four of them, or three of them, I'm sorry. The fire is, I put planets here just to show you how to interpret them. The fire signs are very enthusiastic. They can be very daring, very romantic, very inspirational. And when you look at the meaning of the planets, signs rather, the fire signs, Aries would be very daring, right? Aries, the sign of Mars. Leo is romantic. And Sagittarius is inspirational. So, but they're all combined, they tend to give a great amount of enthusiasm. You know what the word enthusiasm is from?
No, I don't.
It's from entheos, God within.
Okay.
So you can move the world when you have enthusiasm. And enthusiasm is what makes people really get kind of join you in your endeavors. The fact that you're enthusiastic means that you have God within you. So Mercury to Venus gives pleasing conversations. Mercury in good aspect to Venus. And refinement of speech. A very happy mind. Knowledge of beauty. Beauty and art, I'm sorry. So here you got the moon to Mercury. That gives good thinking under emotional pressure, excellent memory, retentive mind, emotions in agreement. Mercury, Mercury and the moon afflicted can, my teacher used to tell me, it can be a sign of a fool.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's like somebody winning at the table of a card game that starts yelling and screaming and acting like an idiot. You know what I'm saying? You've seen them, right? So, so that's a Mercury moon affliction. And I've seen that over the years. It can be the fool. You know, they act the fool because they're like child. The moon is a child in you. Mercury's communication, right?
Right.
So both Mercury and the moon are subjective and very dependent upon signs and aspects to get their meaning. So moon harmonious to Venus gives romantic feelings, harmonious feelings, often a loving mother, peace through the maternal role, emotional peace. So then when you get a chance to look at these, this is Jupiter. Jupiter's main word in the most positive meaning is magnanimous. What does that mean? Mag means large, animal, large animal. A person that has a powerful influence from Jupiter in their chart generally does well with owning a large animal. It helps their spirit and it helps their mind and it helps their optimism in life. I've seen where Jupiter is so strong where I'll tell somebody they should own horses, and they say we own horses, we own race horses. In fact, I mean, and it shocks me because it's so accurate, you know.
Wow.
So, okay.
Someone with Jupiter in their chart, you're saying is like more attracted to animals and things like that, or?
Yeah, they tend to commune well with them. You got to remember, animals are unconscious animals. They're what would I say? They commune on an unconscious level, on a subconscious level. They're much different than the conscious, willful mind. So people that are tuned with them very often have ability to commune with those animals in a way that others can't.
So to have a strong Jupiter in your chart that would make something like that happen would be because the Jupiter is exalted, let's say, per se, or like what would be a good example of like a strong Jupiter in a chart?
Elevation gives power to it, for example. Position, I'm gonna go out real quick. What's that, lady? Oh, you're going to gym? Okay. Okay. Okay, you have Jupiter at 0 Scorpio right here. Okay. Wherever you see Jupiter, that's wisdom. I'm starting to cough a little bit. So I'm sorry. So Jupiter represents wisdom. Scorpio represents secrets. It represents sex. It represents intensity of feeling and ability to put those feelings into kind of into a scope of wisdom and knowledge. It's like the author of the Kama Sutra had very strong Jupiter in Scorpio.
I see.
So, you know, it tends to give wisdom and insights and great understanding of the spiritual aspects of sex. For example, yogic energies and yogic sex, things like that. The ability to retain that energy and to sublimate it. It's really strong in that in this position. And then you have a Sagittarian moon, which is Sagittarius is also Jupiter's sign. So your soul and your intuition are in the sign of Sagittarius, which is Jupiter's sign. This gives a great amount of emotional depth to you, an ability to perceive and understand the mysteries and the higher knowledge of wisdom, which is what Sagittarius is all about. You also have, of course, the moon means your soul is totally tied very much in unity with the new age computer knowledge, um, universal thinking, ability to see beyond the surface of things,
Yeah.
very highly evolved intuition. So let me see. So if we go, let me go back to share screen. Okay, I want to show you how the energies work with crosses, okay?
Okay.
I'm using nothing to do with the signs. I'm not using signs or houses. All I'm talking about is the planets. I'm talking about, we know the moon's not a planet, but we refer for simplicity. So if let's take the moon afflicting Mars in a chart.
Yeah.
So Mars can be always, if it's afflicting, it can be hurtful. So it's emotionally impulsive. Think about the word. Emotionally is the moon. Mars is impulsive. The feelings are hurt easy. Why? The moon is the feelings and Mars hurts. Subconscious conflicts. Why? Because the moon rules your soul, your subconscious. And Mars is conflicts. Generally, these are sexual energy conflicts. Okay, because that's what Mars is, very physical, very sexual. Okay, deep-seated anger. Why is that? Because it's in the soul. That's hard to put a finger on it, you know? It's like it's under the surface all the time when you see Mars afflicting the moon. Whereas if Mars is afflicting the sun, it's much more on the surface. It's anger, it's conscious. Like I have Mars afflicting my sun. And I'm very quick to anger. I know that. I've always been that way. And it's a fault of mine, you know, it's like I acknowledge it. But I also learned to praise it and be thankful for it. Because if I hadn't had the quick temper I have, I would have never survived 9 years of imprisonment. It was my anger that sustained me, kept people from pushing my buttons. So it's also compulsive desires. The moon, Mars is. Remember, the moon is compulsive. It's your habits. And desires is Mars. So you got compulsive desires. And you got stomach ulcers potentially. Because what does the sun, I mean, the moon is your stomach. I mean, your stomach is rather the moon rules the stomach. And it rules your habit patterns. And Mars can burn or cause ulcers. It can be immature sexually. Why immature? Because the moon is a child in us. Okay? You still with me? Okay,
Yeah, totally.
so it can be emotional outburst. Okay? So if you have a relationship going on with somebody that has this aspect, or you have a child, for example, that has this aspect, it can help you understand that child a lot more and deal with it.
For sure.
So let's go to the moon and Mercury. Okay, we got emotional and mental confusion. Remember, these are afflictions. Childish and foolish and emotional speech response. Remember I told you, Percy used to tell me the moon and Mercury afflictions can be the fool. They act the fool. They act the fool. Why? Because they're immature. The child is reacting with their mouth, Mercury, their speech, their thought process. A childish and foolish and emotional speech response. Conflict between mother and brother. Why? Because Mercury rules your brothers and sisters. Your mother is the moon. So if they're at war in the chart, you can generally see that.
Okay, I see.
Okay? So thought and habits are in conflict. Thoughts and habits. Mercury, do you know in Mercury in the Arab countries, Mercury is called Thoth, Thoth. That's where we got our word thought from.
Yeah.
Okay. Emotional and mental breakdowns at the very worst. Immaturity of thinking and speech. These are the affliction potentials, okay?
Okay.
And what's being trying to be taught here? If you go to Moon Saturn in a stress aspect, for example, it's trying to teach coordination between feelings and thoughts, teaching maturity of mind, responsible thinking, integration between mind and thinking, seeking mastery over mind and emotions. All this has got a lesson. There's lessons being taught in these squares. It's trying to teach us something. It's not all negative stuff. It's just that it's areas we need to develop and grow to mature, right?
I see.
So, okay. You can study this in your own time, but here's another thing. Remember, Mars, assertive depression, desires, passion, energy, anger. If it's afflicting Saturn, it can cause bone and teeth injuries. Excuse me. So one of the things it also can cause business conflicts, power and success drives. It can be coldly aggressive and cruel. It can be utilitarian in sex with strong drives. Why utilitarian in sex? Because Saturn is I use, Capricorn's key word, I use. And Mars is sexual. So if you see that energy, you have that in your chart. You have a conjunction of Mars and Saturn. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's important to recognize and not get into a relationship where you are basically using another person for your own desires.
Yeah.
Okay. And it can be accident prone, but you seem not to fit in that category. The very worst can be chronic disease because Chronos is Saturn. When we talk about chronic, we're talking Saturn. Saturn is of long duration, Chronos, a time, long time. And Mars can bring, if it's an affliction that's a disease, it can be chronic. So all these things don't mean that it's got to be that way. It's a lot of it has to do with understanding the energies and then not becoming prey to them. For example, if you look at Mercury to Saturn energy, it's very self-conscious about speaking, Mercury afflicting Saturn. Mercury's speech, mind, speech, and thought. It can be isolated communication, meaning it tends to isolate or separate us from others. Remember, Saturn is the vision, separation, alienation. Worried mind, negative thinking. That's Saturn and Mercury. Pessimistic speech and thinking. Accusing, divisive communication. Cursing and crude in conversation. Speech impediment, slow of speech. Okay. All these things are potential with a Mercury Saturn affliction. And so remember Aaron was Moses' brother, and God gave Aaron, how was it? He gave one of his brothers, he gave him because he said, I'm slow of speech.
Yeah.
So he was given Aaron as a mouthpiece. So that was God's way of dealing with a aspect, if you would, or a communication problem that was potential with Moses. So anyway, this is just some examples. I'm just, you don't, none of this is written in stone. It's understanding also the caliber of the consciousness of the person you're dealing with.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you have somebody Like I find Saturn at its worst can be a lot of cursing and negativity. The cup's never half full, it's always half empty. So when we're dealing with charts, you're dealing with the constant trying to, for example, when I was in prison, the consciousness and the level of maturity was such that I would constantly find my negative astrological predictions more accurate.
Oh, okay.
For example, I tell you the story. I tell you the story of my best friend. I broke his nose. Did I tell you that?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I told him he was going to have a head injury that day.
Oh, yeah. I've heard that story. Yeah.
So you never know how things will manifest either. You know, you'll never know. I mean, you might think you may see it happen, but you don't know what's going to precipitate it. And I would have never expected it would be me.
The head injury was indicated because there was an affliction in the first house, or in the first house of
Well, yeah,
Saturn.
you know, it's been a long time ago since I did that chart. I don't know for sure, but usually, you know, usually Mars and Gemini's involved. Gemini's speech, Mars, and then his, you know, in that part of the body, usually the first house, or in Aries, which rules the head, shows a head injury.
Okay.
So every part of the body is ruled by, you know, some aspect in energy in a chart. The neck is ruled by Taurus. Mars in, for example, I have Mars in Pisces. Pisces rules your feet. I would have never thought in my entire lifetime that I would have had to have surgery on my feet. But I injured my foot when I was moving some very heavy. I have this big old cabinet in front of me here, and I was moving it up a stairs, and I ripped out my plantar fasciitis.
Oh.
So I ended up having to have surgery on that. But even though I know I have Mars and Pisces afflicted, and that it can cause that problem, I still wouldn't listen to my wife when she said, find somebody to help us with this. I had to be the tough guy. I can do it myself. So my ego caused me a lot of problems. So there are a lot of things that happen in charts that are potential, but it doesn't mean you have to succumb to that, if you know what I mean. For example, in your chart, you have great potential for back problems, okay?
Right.
But knowing it helps you, yeah, because the fact that you know, you can be more mindful of it and not stress it to the point where you do what I just was telling you I did in my life, trying to lift more than I should have lifted, you know?
Right. Maybe even, yeah, that's true. Now I avoid certain exercises in the gym to avoid creating back problems, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and try to build up my back a little more. You know,
Exactly.
Yeah.
So elevation gives power to benefic and malefic planets. Elevation meaning is it higher in the star, like in the 12 noon position.
Okay.
The sun and moon are ascendant ruler under affliction can endanger the health, especially if afflicted by Mars or Saturn. And the cardinal signs of Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. Cardinal signs, if you have planets in cardinal signs afflicting, they can cause more physical problems than they would otherwise, because those signs tend towards, the sun rules the back, the heart, the will, the conscious mind. Afflicted, it can bring injury to the back, the heart, and weaken the willpower. If afflicted, one should increase intake of vitamin E and D. Eventually, you'll get into even nutrition.
Yeah.
Because there's a relationship between these vitamins and to these planets. And there's a whole area of astrology that it deals with just that alone. See, like
Yeah.
Mercury affliction should be offset with B complex and phosphorus.
And once you can see the affliction, then you can treat it, right? I mean, you can be more cautious around it.
Exactly. Yeah, Mercury affliction. Mercury rules the mind, and B complex and phosphorus. The area of the body is affected are the lungs, the mind, and speech. Also, it has an influence on the hands and arms. For example, Mars afflicting Mercury in Gemini. Gemini rules your arms and your hands. And very often there can be scars and wounds on those, that part of the body. Venus rules the kidneys and is somewhat related to our intake of sweets and sugars. What do we do when we love somebody? We give them chocolates.
Yeah.
What are we doing for that? What we're doing is like I love sugars. I love sweets, unfortunately. And it's not been good for me, Can cause diabetic problems and other things. So when we're out of touch with others due to a lack of affection, we often seek out sugar and sweets to assuage our needs. One of the main causes of death among people with diabetes, the intolerance to sugar, is the kidney failure, all under the rule of Venus. People with heavy Venus affliction should avoid excessive sugar intake and vitamin A and copper, which are counteracting to afflictions of this planet. Now you notice I have a grand cross on my Venus. My Venus is afflicted on a grand cross. And, I've lived 82 years, okay, but, in my later years, I've had to deal with sugar problems. And see what I'm saying? And it's interesting. What's amazing to me is how astrology assigns Venus to Libra, which rules your kidneys. Libra rules your kidneys. And how in the world these ancients understood, I don't think there was ever much cases of diabetes back in those days. There just wasn't that much sugar around.
Right.
But it seems the work, their knowledge was there already, but it wasn't important at that point, maybe. But over the years, it's become much more true that the kidneys are one of the main victims of sugar problems. And again, how would they assign that part of the body to Venus and to the intake of sugar? I don't know, it's just weird to me.
It's something. I mean, history is interesting.
So I just give a lot of influences of planetary influences. The transits are not as important as a lot of people think.
Oh, okay.
But I show how to understand them, and the more you learn, the better you'll be. But the point being that let me go back to there. Okay, so let me get out of here. 1 second.
So you would say the natal is the most important, huh? I mean, that's where you see everything. You see so much about the person that you don't really need to look at the transits every day or every week or whatever.
No, that's a waste of time, I think. The things that you need to look at, and I'll teach you to do this. Right now we've got a long journey ahead, but Saturn doesn't rule me. I'm not a Saturn guy. I'm not about time. Okay. Oh my God, it's 4:30. That doesn't mean anything to me. What matters is that we spend a meaningful time of learning. And when you're studying, it'll seem overwhelming at this point. But believe me, I've got students all over the world that have become good astrologers. And my methods may not be very defined. I'm a Sagittarius, I'm very spontaneous. I'm very much go with the flow, if you would. But the most essential things you'll learn from me, and you're going to have to do your own work on this, understanding the symbols, learning
Yeah,
learning the shorthand of astrology,
yeah,
um, and staying daily with it, and read anything you want in astrology. Don't worry about it. One thing also, when you're reading, whether it's something you printed out with my workbook or you're reading a book, um, I want you to mark that book up. Use a
okay,
pen. Every time you see the word Mars, make the symbol above it.
okay, yeah,
You'll learn it quicker that way.
right,
So every time you see a symbol of the sun or the word sun, write the sun symbol above it. Every time you see a square, it talks about a square and aspect, always make the square symbol, just a square symbol. And do that in conjunction, little thing with an arrow, I mean, with a line on top. If you do those, you'll learn them so quick. Instead of trying to just by rote, it's hard. You need a visual thing, something that keeps it in your heart, and it'll be much better that way. Um, I also want you to not, I don't want you to get discouraged. I see a great potential in you, okay? And sometimes I don't, and I tell somebody, I'll tell them. I mean, I will. I'm very upfront with people, and don't waste your time and your money, and it's not something you're going to do. And generally, quite amazingly, people can be very, I know that, Ron. I'm just not dedicated enough, and I'm not committed enough. So, but I see a great potential for you, and not just not just as an astrologer, but as a counselor. And eventually, you may end up writing or having a blog or something that will help bring this knowledge to other people. I'd like you to kind of become, I don't like the word disciple in a way, of my teachings, and to integrate it not only in your life and your practice, but into the point where you can help others with it and teach others. Um, I I don't know how long I'm going to be here, quite frankly. I told you I predicted my death for one time before, and it didn't happen because the doctors kept me alive. But technically I died because my heart stopped during the open heart surgery. I had open heart surgery. Did I tell you the story?
I think I read about it something you wrote about that, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, in
Yeah.
2017. So they
It
they
was,
they
it was
infected
part
me.
of your book, right? Was
Huh?
it part of, it was part of your book, The Cosmic Key?
Actually, no, I didn't include that. I had a heart attack in 2009,
Okay,
and my son was home, and I was laying on the bed. I was in pain, and I'm always a tough guy. I can't, I'm okay. Don't me. I'll be, just let me rest. I'll be fine. And my son called 911 right away, and thereby saved my life, obviously, because they took me in an ambulance to the hospital, and the two girls in the ambulance that were paramedics, were giving me painkillers because the pain was horrendous, and they had me under oxygen, and the nurses saying, the woman saying, from 1 to 10, what's your pain? Because they keep hitting me with morphine. I'd say it's 8, or whatever. Or I try to be tough and say it's 7 when it's 10. But long and short of it, um, they had me under a mask with oxygen, and I was repeating over and over again, praise the Lord, thank you. Praise the Lord. Thank you. Praise the Lord. Thank you. And one of the girls that was at my other, that was pumping me full of morphine, said to the girl that's at my head, so what is he saying? So she lifts up and listens to me. She says, I think you gave him too much morphine. Oh. So I get to the hospital. They were going to air flight me, but they didn't because they decided it would take more time than the ride across the country there. But anyway, they gave me a stent, and I've been good ever since. And I never took medications. They said, if you don't take this every day, you're going to die, Ron. Well, 9 years later, I still hadn't died, but I ended up with a blockage. So I ended up going in for surgery. So you say, how can all this work together for good? That's what I'm trying to teach you, is what I'm trying to tell you. Praise, give thanks, trust in good, no matter what you're going through. That's what works the miracles, okay? It's what revives the dead. It's what saves your life. So it's not what happens to us in life, it's how we respond to it. The highest response there is love. And love is only manifest in praise and thanksgiving. If you love your girlfriend, you praise her and you give her thanks. First stage of breaking up is what? You went through it. It's accusing any fault. You always and you never. You always do this. You never do that. You know what I mean? So anyway, I had predicted my death within 2 days, I think, of it happening. And I told two of my students, one in Newfoundland and another in Connecticut. They're very close to me, and we were all out of 10. The Connecticut girl was here, and we were out to dinner. And I kind of sidled up next to her. I said, I don't want you to tell my wife. But I said, I'm checking out. I'll be checking out on December the 18th or 19th, whatever. And she started crying. I said, do not tell my wife. She can't bear this, to hear this. And then I told Karen in Newfoundland on the phone, I said, my church says it's time for me to go. So anyway, I end up, we were going through a lot of financial duress at the time, and my son was very successful, and he found out, he said, why didn't you go to cardiology? I said, I've got insurance, but it costs. And he says, the hell with that. He says, here's the money. Please go to the hospital, cardiology. So I go, and they find out I've got 2 serious blockages. And I'm on death's door. Said, you get over there right now to the hospital. Yeah. And that was right in this time period that I had predicted I would die. So I would have probably died if it hadn't been for my son. But I also did die because my heart stopped. Technically, I did. But so I go to the hospital, and I'm in open heart surgery very quickly on the date that I had predicted I would die. So,
wow.
So what happens is during the surgery, they open me up and they put me back together again, but they infected me with a very serious infection. So they sent me on home, and I remember the doctor, I never forgot him, the nurse saying, do you want to put him on antibiotics? He doesn't need them. I never forgot that. And I do also remember when I was in the operating table preparing me for surgery. I remember a woman, one of the nurses, coughing and sneezing. And somebody said to her, you shouldn't be here. Oh, it's just an allergy, she said. And she stayed there to work with me. These were red flags that later I kind of put them all together, but so I ended up, so they sent me home without antibiotics. They got a nurse taking care of me, come in here. And my wife's very smart. Her mother's a cardiologist, one of the top. Her grandmother's one of the top scientists in Russia. She's the Madame Curie of Russia. She died in died in her 50s of cancer from radiation, working in Russia. And my son, by the way, turned out to be all the things that his grandparents were. Top scientist, genius of a kid. He's a classical pianist as well. He speaks Russian and French fluently. He's an amazing kid. And he has his own company, started working on COVID right away. And he worked with the Army and biodefense. I mean, this 23 years old when he went out of college, and he became his own company. Anyway, so so they infected me. So I go, my wife's telling the nurse, I think he's infected. Oh, no, these home nurses. No, everything looks great. And finally, I'm running a high fever, and we go to the surgeon that did the follow-up surgery on my wound. And he looks at my wound and he pushes it, and it went like a volcanic explosion of infection.
Oh my gosh.
It was so bad. He said, you get to the hospital emergency right away. I got to clean you out. So he tells my wife he's got a 3% chance of living. He'll never make it. He's so infected. So he opens me up again, cleans me out, and he has to do it a total of 8 times. Open me up 8 more times.
Oh my gosh.
You say, what good can come out of this, Ryan? How can this be good? I'm just trying to share with you how extreme my faith is. How extreme. So, 1 minute. I'm trying to get rid of this last of this cold. So what goes on? 8 surgeries, total of 9 surgeries now, and they've opened me up. My hole in my chest is humongous. If I showed you a picture, you'd pass out maybe. I mean, if I showed you even now, I could open up and show you. I still got a wound, open wound from 2017 all the way. And so a lot of it's healed, but it's still long. Still, you can still see my sternum. So you say, Ron, how can you praise and give thanks for all this? Well, one of the things, and one of my goals in my life was always to make sure my wife was secure. Right? And I always said, if God forbid anything happens to me, I want to make sure she's secure. She's the most loving, beautiful human being on the earth. And I just wanted to make sure of that. So my wife is a bulldog when it comes to me. I hope. So what happens is she hires their attorneys and we go to war. And it took a couple of years, 3 years almost. We won the battle.
Oh wow.
And we're very secure. We're very secure. The point being, yeah, I don't have to work again, But the point being, people say to me, Ron, you're going to tell me that all. I said, yeah. I said, all things work together for good for them who love God. All things, not some things, everything. Even if what I got to go through, if it means all that, it's okay because I know it'll work out. So I'm so sorry I'm coughing so much. But the message I'm trying to give to you in every circumstance, if I can instill in you that kind of faith, your life will never be the same again. It'll be so blessed. If you walk outside and you get hit by a car and your legs are broken, I want you to praise God and thank Him. That's kind of faith I want you to have. And I'm sorry for this. So anyway, the bottom line is all things work together for good, not something. But let me get, he said, this is interesting, real quick. Yeah, Phil.
Hey, Ron.
Huh? I'm with a client. But I got your message about the book, and your friend read it, and he's pretty excited about it.
Yeah, very excited. He actually found you on YouTube too and watched it, and he says he thinks you channeled the book. I said, well, the Holy Spirit can speak to us all.
Well, you know, actually, when he said that he thought I channeled the book, it's probably a little truth. My wife even said at the time, he said, we never considered that. But I said, the way the information comes to me and has come to me over the years, it's convinced me. 1 second here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I think I'm picking you up on my phone.
Yeah.
Okay, that's better than my watch. Okay, Apple Watch. Okay. So what I was going to say to you was that when he said channel, I was just, I'm getting over a little cold here. I'm sorry. So, you know, so I was just telling my student Jared that when you mentioned channeling, that I actually feel that it may be closer to the truth because it's stuff that comes to me. It has come to me through, you know, uncovering the mysteries of this book.
Yeah, I think you just
I'm sorry.
tapped into the Casey correctly.
I think I'm getting a message. I'm gonna have to quit this. But let me, yeah, I'm with Jared, a beautiful guy, and he's my new student here. And we've been going for 3 hours and actually enjoying it, every bit of it. Some people give and some people take, and there's those that just give and give, so you don't ever feel drained. And that's how I feel about this guy. Anyway, so look at, I'll do, you know, if you want to, you said you were going to do a Zoom session.
Well, what I'm thinking, I think there's some potential business for you with this group that I do 3 classes a week with them.
Okay.
And I think we do a one-on-one with Antonio, just the 3 of us talking, and then let him kind of quote unquote take the lead. And I think number one, he hires you to do his charts, and then he'll be a testimonial to everybody else in the organization.
Yeah.
You to do there.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm kind of. No, I mean, I'm willing to work with you and share with you. I'm not so much. How would I say that? I'm just not in the hustle mode in my life.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Attraction, not promotion.
You got him. So I'm really, boy, I'm having a rough time.
That was the one question I was going to ask you. You know, how much business do you want?
You know, I've got enough already. I really do.
Okay.
But I mean, the most important thing right now, I like sharing the knowledge of my book. I'm losing it, I think, too much here. Let me get back to you. It's not so much about I need or wanting business. I'm very secure in my life. I don't have any needs for quite anything. I love to share. And when I meet somebody like I just did, Jared, who's my new student, I'm so thrilled because he's so into the spiritual knowledge of what we're teaching. And it makes my day. So I'll be there. I'll be there for you guys. If you want to share, I love you too, boy. Take care. Bye-bye. Now, this is a guy I've known for 30, 40 years, maybe. when I first got out of prison.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and he he and his wife moved to Florida from Ohio so they could be near us.
Oh, good.
And he's ended up with he's a motivational speaker, one of the best on the earth, really is. And but he ended up with Parkinson's disease.
Okay.
Yeah, but he's one of these overcomers, you know, and he's one of my first students in my life when I first got out of prison. And I shaped his life, and he shaped a lot of other people's lives. You know, he doesn't do the astrology; he does motivational speaking, and he's full of wisdom and knowledge. So, but I'm gonna have to quit. I see I'm losing it here, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna say this a little bit maudlin, maybe, but I love you, brother.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
We're on a journey together. You know, we'll take a day at a time and just enjoy it. And I want you to do your homework, though.
Well, yeah, I'm motivated, so I've got some things to learn. I'm ready to, spend some time investing. To me, it's an investment. You know, not just financially, but spiritually, emotionally. That's an important place to put your time. So that's what I'm doing.
You know, I was led. Sometimes I think people led to meet each other, and I am very intuitive about things sometimes in a way that I can't explain. But I remember meeting a guy in a parking lot one time, and I was with a young girl at the time. I was in between marriage and we were staying at this apartment complex. This guy walks in just casually by the pool or something. And I said, you and I are going to get to know each other. And he said, what? I said, yeah, something's going to come up past. And so sure enough, he started dating one of my secretaries. And yeah, he's from England. I think he was England, but anyway, he ended up he ended up sleeping with, because we had places where we could live as well as work, and he ended up living with her, and we became the closest of friends. You know, he was bartending, waiting to go back to the United Kingdom, and we became the best of best friends. You know, but you know, I was one time seeing the guy, and I said, you know, there's something going to happen here. You know, and I kind of feel that about you. I don't understand it yet. I don't need to, quite frankly, but I'm not attached to it. But the point being that, you know, I see a giant of a man in you. And I'll tell you something that's very interesting too. My wife said to me, is he black? Before I had any knowledge of who you were, right?
Right.
I never forget her said that to me. I thought, well, I wonder why she said that. You know what I mean? My wife's like that. She's like that, you know. And so, you know, there's no way I could have known that, you know. And I'm thinking, and I remember saying, oh, I don't think so, no. And but it's strange. Sometimes things are like that, you know. You just there's a knowing beyond knowing, and you know. So you're a beautiful man.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate everything you're doing, and I'm looking forward to continuing.
Okay, same time, same week, same time.
Yeah.
Okay. And like I said, be open to change. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
We're friends. That's it. It's like, doesn't matter about when or what. If something comes up and you say, Ron, I'd rather do it tomorrow or the next day, or do it earlier or later, whatever. It's okay.
Okay. That sounds good. I appreciate that too.
All right. All right, Jared. Take care, my friend.
Thank you. We'll talk to you later. I'll talk to you soon. Okay.
Okay. All right. Amen.
Bye.
Bye-bye.